This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
NBA All-Star Weekend is here. We had some Pistons representation over the weekend. And this is normally where we would like to give you our playoff push conversation. But we haven't gotten the opportunity to do that in...
No.
Yeah.
3 years?
Exactly. This is the Fan of Fort Worth 5 fans.
4 fans.
We're on episode number 193. Follow us on Twitter @RealFanReport. We're brought to you by Detroit Sports Podcast @Detroit Podcast on Twitter for them. This is kind of a not fun time, I guess. It's a tough episode to do because it's All-Star Weekend, or it's the All-Star break, I should say. And there's nothing really to write home about the Pistons being involved. Jaden Ivey didn't do really anything. Jalen Duren didn't really do anything.
Well, Jalen Duren didn't play. He was hurt.
Well, that's true. He was hurt. So you really had...
Here at the other ankle.
Yeah. At least it was a different one this time.
Is that better or worse? Because now I got 2 bum ankles.
I would say better because then you know it's not a nagging situation where he continues to re-injure the same thing over and over again. Because then you got a Zion Williamson problem, and you don't want that.
Yeah. Well, I think we suddenly need James Wiseman.
We do. We do.
Because currently, I think our only bigs are Isaiah Stewart and Nerlens Noel outside of Wiseman.
There's really not a ton to talk about from the Lions front. We did lose another coach, and there is a little bit of Twitter back and forth from Amon-Ra St. Brown and a couple other names out there. So we can kind of talk about that a little bit. Somebody throwing shade at Detroit once again.
And this guy I actually like. It's the annoying part.
You know what? I don't. And I never.
Oh,
really have.
It's past tense now.
No, I don't. I never really have. I think he's a really good player.
Oh, I remember I
really
loved him in the draft. Like he was the guy I wanted.
He wasn't my favorite pick at the spot. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I remember saying I'd take him, but he wasn't my favorite pick at the spot. Because that was the Penei Sewell draft, right? Yes, it had to have been.
Yes.
Sewell was my guy.
Well, yeah. But none of us expected Sewell to be there.
True. But, and in terms on the Pistons front, there's not really a ton to talk about there. The team continues to flounder. We can talk about how Wiseman's looked so far, I guess. Mm-hmm. They did make a signing today. Let's get the Pistons out of the way early, actually.
Okay, yeah.
Pistons did make a signing today. RJ Hampton, he was waived by Orlando, and then Detroit picked him up. Or he's expected to sign today, I believe. I don't think it's actually been finalized, but it does seem like he's going to be coming here. Andrew, what kind of expectations do you have for RJ Hampton in the last 23 games of the Pistons season?
He's going to play whatever minutes Hamidou gives up out of tiredness, a.k.a. maybe 5 minutes a night. Because you literally, he's basically Hamidou 2.0. Another guy who's just a hyper-athletic, really speedy guard. Essentially needs to work on it's all potential with him. If you can get his jumper to fall, he'll have a decent he'll be a decent offensive guard. If you can get him to leverage his athleticism and dial in on defense, he could be a decent defender. It's all about potential based on athleticism, which is exactly what Hami is.
I'm not going to say that somebody's going to be a decent defender on this team if you can dial in their effort, because
that's what I'm saying. Like,
nobody has that here.
I know. I think the jury's. I think it's case is closed on RJ Hampton's defense.
Well, not just that. Nobody seems to put in effort defensively on this basketball team. Yeah. And that goes against the head coach. Like that, Dwayne Casey doesn't demand effort out of his players on the defense side of the ball, clearly, because it's not there.
Yeah.
Decent offensively, I think, is being generous. He's a career 40% shooter from the field, 40.8 to be exact. Career 33.7% 3-point shooter.
That's why I said he's a guy. He's like just like Hami. If you can get his shot to fall, he can be a decent offensive player.
Right.
It's a big if, just like it's a big if with Hami.
Jaden Ivey. If you can get a shot to fall, he ain't half bad. I really think he's nothing more than a body in case of injury. Maybe they start to look to kind of ramp down the minutes for guys like Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren to preserve them and not risk any further injury or any injury there. You could see minutes for guys like RJ Hampton because of stuff like that, but I don't really have any expectations for him now.
What surprises me, though, is how quickly the Pistons cleaned him off waivers. Like it was like an hour.
Is this another one of Troy Weaver's reclamation projects?
After news broke that RJ Hampton was hitting waivers, I remember there were people someone posted on Reddit. I can't remember the username. But someone posted on Reddit like RJ Hampton's hitting waivers, and like, please God, Pistons don't do
waivers. He cleared waivers, then the Pistons.
No, I thought we claimed him off waivers. I don't think
we claimed him. I think he cleared waivers, and the Pistons are signing him.
Awfully quick from the clear waivers too, but.
All I see is waived by the Magic, set to sign with the Pistons, which tells me that he wasn't.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Woj tweeted he cleared waivers.
Yeah, okay. I think waivers in the NBA is only like 24 hours, so it's not long. I think it's the same.
This is like 1 hour.
Maybe quite literally every other GM said no within that hour.
Just immediate.
Yeah. Nope.
Did you see Victor Wembanyama grew an inch?
I did see that.
He's now 7'5"
in shoes. He's 7'5" in shoes.
Yeah. Well, that's what he's gonna be wearing when he's on the court. So
right. I did see that. I don't. Is it weird to say I don't necessarily want him to keep growing? Because I don't. Because when you grow like that, you start losing some of that coordination. And I don't want him to lose any.
I'm more about the more you grow, the more risk you are to get injured.
That too. But I mean, 7'4" to 7'5", like what the hell's the difference there in terms of that risk?
Yeah,
once you hit 7 feet, the risk is there.
Yeah,
and it ain't gonna grow any further unless you hit like 8 feet. But he quite literally is a creative player from back in like NBA Live 04, where you create the dude that's 7'6" and 240 pounds and. He played point guard. Yeah, this is the creative player with all 99 stats.
Yeah, just to put things in perspective for everyone, he's currently 4 inches taller than Shaq.
Well, I mean, Shaq,
Shaq was 7'1" in shoes
now, isn't he? Because Yao was
7'7" or 7'6" was Yao.
7'6". He was 7'6", so he's almost Yao's height, which that's ridiculous.
And Yao was the stiff of all stiffs.
Yes. Well, okay. No, that's a little disrespectful. He was talented. He had talent. He wasn't athletic or super athletic, I should say, but he had some talent.
Is it bad that the first thing that comes to my mind every time someone brings up Yao's name is him getting blocked by Nate Robinson?
Yes, that's bad because the guy, that's disrespectful. Yao Ming is a hell of a good basketball player. That's disrespectful.
No, he was good. His time in the league, it was just short-lived due to injury.
How many years do you think Yao Ming played?
Are you talking about quality years or total years?
I mean, I would argue that all but one of his seasons was considered quality. His final year where he only played 5 games, the only year that he wasn't quality, looking at his stats.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, because Yao would have been drafted in 2002.
His rookie year was 02-03.
And I'm fairly certain he played 10 years.
You'd be shooting too high.
Damn. 8 years.
He played 7 years in the league. If you want to consider 48 games a full season in his 5th year. Then he missed a year. And then he played 5 games and retired.
So you're saying 7 aside from the missed year and then the 5-game year, he played 7 seasons? Or are you saying that's including those 2 years?
That is not including those 2 years.
Okay, so he played 7 actual seasons.
Yes,
and then one of them was half
made
a season.
An appearance. Yes, and then he made an appearance in an 8th season, which he made the All-Star team in a season he only played 5 games.
Checks out.
What do you think his average is over his first 7 years where he was playing quality basketball?
20
his
and
scoring
12.
average. What'd you say?
Low 20s and 12.
Hang on, I'm getting it right here.
Yao was never the most dominant scorer, but he was just so big that like he put up points. But he wasn't a guy that was gonna step out. Like I think he has hit a couple threes in his career, but like Yeah, he was never the guy that was gonna beat you multiple ways with the basketball.
He never hit a three in his career.
Thought he did. I could swear I've seen footage of Yao hitting a three.
According to Basketball Reference, he did not hit a three in the NBA.
Maybe it was footage of him taking a three. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe it was just me playing NBA Live. I don't know.
He averaged right about 20 points. 20 points and under 10 rebounds, probably closer to low
Really?
nines.
He didn't average 10 rebounds?
Right. Low nines probably where he averaged. His rookie year, 8.2. Second year, 9.0. Third year, 8.4. Fifth year, 10.2. Sorry, fourth year, 10.2. Then 9.4. Then 10.8. Then 9.9. He never averaged 11 boards. He did average over a block and a half a game in his career. He was a pretty monster player. Oh, wait. I do see a 3-point percentage of 1,000 one year and 500 one year.
He did hit a three. So I thought I could swear.
But it says he didn't hit a three. Okay, he hit 2 threes in his career. He was 2 for 10 in his career.
I was exact. I think he hit a couple.
He did. He was 2 for 10 in his career. In his rookie year and in his second to last season.
I still remember my first ever time playing fantasy basketball. I want to say it was 2007. I had both Yao and Shaq on my team. And I was like so hyped about it. And then
that was the Heat Shaq, right?
And then like neither of them ever really played. Well, specifically Yao. I think Shaq was still in Phoenix in 2007, wasn't he?
I thought he won a championship with that.
Actually, wait, no, he might have
team.
been. He might have been the Heat with the Heat.
I think didn't he win a championship with that team?
No.
So 07, Yao played 55.
Yep.
And
Checks
07, Shaq was still with Miami. He was at 06, 07, he was with Miami that year. He played 40 games.
Yep. Checks out. Because I remember both of them never being available.
Was it 06 that Shaq won the title with the Heat? The Shaq D. Wade Heat?
Yeah.
That's the year I'm thinking of then.
That checks out in my head.
Well, I'm pulling up the receipts.
I was stuck in a
Yes, it was 2006. Nice. 2006 Miami Heat beat the Mavs in 6 games. That's what it was.
But anyway, enough about basketball history. We went down a rabbit hole.
So
back to RJ Hampton.
Speaking of guys over 7 feet tall, the Pistons did recently trade for one.
Yeah, James Wiseman. He
played in 1 game for Detroit before the All-Star break in a 109-127 loss to the Celtics.
Yep.
Where he put up 11 points, had 5 rebounds on 55.5% shooting. He did take a 3. He did miss, though, and he was 1 for 2 from the line. What were your thoughts on James Wiseman's debut with Detroit?
Kind of right along with expectations. When given the opportunity to score, he showed that he can do the things we expect him to be able to do offensively. He also did show his vast lack of experience defensively, missed a lot of assignments, and he did get tunnel vision a couple of times, like we expect. Like the things you normally expect out of a young player who hasn't played many games is exactly what you saw with James Wiseman.
Right. Now, the one thing
the guy has played less games than Jalen Duren.
The one thing I think that is underwhelming...
let's put this in perspective.
Right. One thing I think that is Well, I thought he's played 66 games in his career. I'm pretty sure he has. Thought I read a stat that said he had played 66 total games in his career. But I've always found it strange when a player who's 7 feet tall and has athleticism doesn't rebound very well.
Yeah. I always find that strange. Because at that point, it's effort and positioning.
Right, and he doesn't really rebound that well, and not as well as. And I mean, it's not like the Pistons necessarily need another big that can rebound the ball with crazy effectiveness. They just need somebody that can get those secondary rebounds.
We do get out rebounded the boards night.
So having another guy that can, but I feel like they get rebounded at the wing and the guard position a lot. Because the only guy that can grab a rebound on this basketball team is Jalen Duren. Let's be honest. Isaiah Stewart, depending on the night, but it's Jalen Duren. He's the guy who grabs all the rebounds for the Pistons night in, night out. He's played 61 career games. James Wiseman, including the game against Boston. So just a hair over Jalen Duren.
Yeah.
Just a hair. I think he'll help the rebounding for the Pistons. He doesn't really help them defensively, in my opinion. Not with Dwayne Casey coaching him.
And that's the problem is we need him to.
Right, I know. That's where they really needed him, especially because that's where we all looked at this trade as a reactionary trade from what happened in the game against Cleveland, where Jared Allen and Evan Mobley just dominated the Pistons and every facet of the big man game, and Detroit had no answer. So what do? They go out and go get a big man. I don't know. I'm curious on how this is going to work with Jalen Duren. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be kind of weird. I'm also interested to see what his minutes are going to be like going forward, because Jalen Duren played 25 minutes in that game. Yes, I do believe he hurt his ankle in that game. Wiseman himself played 24. Are we to expect that James Wiseman, in a night where Jalen Duren is playing, is going to play 24, 25 minutes a game?
That's a good question. No. Even though I think, what's Duren averaging right now? Like, I'm talking, not by now, I'm talking like the last, 30 games. Is he?
So
right
in 26
minutes,
games,
right?
in 26 games as a starter, he's averaged 28 and a half minutes.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's no way I'd see James Wiseman getting over 25 minutes a game. It's probably going to be low 20s at best.
Which I kind of expect, and I'm not necessarily saying that I think that's a bad decision. I do want to see as much time as if the future plan of this team, and Troy Weaver, this is where Troy Weaver really needs to step in. But if the future plan of this team is to have Jalen Duren and James Wiseman playing alongside each other, you need to get these guys alongside each other for as many minutes as possible throughout the remainder of this year. That is the one, we look at the Pistons record, they're 15 and 44, whatever it was. They're 15 and 44. There's not a lot of positives to take out. There's not a lot of salvaging of this basketball season. It's a wasted season. We've said that many, many times.
Yep.
I will say this. Look at me being optimistic here. You took away the best player on this team.
You took away the second best player on this team last year, Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, okay. You took him away at the draft, actually.
Yeah.
Or no, they traded him at
the
end
of the season. At the end of the season.
Was it the end of the season? Okay.
The off season. I think it was an off season deal.
Okay. You took away the two top producing players on this basketball team from the prior year. And if they continue to play at the exact same pace that they're
what's their deadline deal? I got me second
I could have
guessing.
sworn it was a deadline deal.
It might have been. But anyway, sorry,
But
continue.
even then, they played better
Beside the
basketball
point.
at the end of the season, if I remember
They did.
right.
Mm-hmm. They were flirting with 500 ball after you lost Redberg.
Right.
That's why I was optimistic coming into the season.
But if you take this team and you put it at the same pace as they're currently playing at, they finished with 2 fewer wins than they had last year. You took away the 2 highest producing pieces of the basketball team from the prior year, and you only ended up with losing 2 fewer wins. A lot of people look at the season as a wasted season, including myself. There's not much to gain from it. There's not much to take from it. However, you can say that, hey...
By the way, he did play out the whole season.
He did play out the whole season. Okay, that proves my point even further, actually.
He didn't play the last 10 games, but he was on the team.
Right. You found something in the draft in what could be considered the steal of the draft in Jalen Duren, who looks to be your mainstay center for the future. And he's extremely young and is, in all honesty, years ahead of where we expected to be. Years, plural, ahead of where we expected him to be at this point. Jay Nivey, by himself...
We expect him to be playing G League ball at this point.
Right. Jay Nivey by himself with really not much leadership guidance on the floor has been... He's shown spots where he's looked really good. And he's shown spots where this is a kid who is young, inexperienced, and has flaws in his game, but doesn't have somebody to lead him.
It's kind of been exactly what we expected. He's going to be able to rely on his physical gifts to get a bucket, but at the same time, some of those holes in his game are going to show and hold him back in his rookie season, and hopefully be fixed over time. And
you also brought in a guy who is playing the best basketball of his career, is a veteran presence in the locker room, and all but replaced the scoring that you lost in Jeremy Grant. And that's and some. And you've got him locked up for a few years in Bojan Bogdanovic. There are positives to take out of what we've got. Bojan looks to be meshing with some of these guys. Jay Nivey, I don't know what you can truly take out of the season for him because of the fact that things are going to change when Cade's back in. But at the worst, it's a year of experience of NBA basketball where he looked at, for the most part, to be able to hold his own, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And Jalen Duren looks to be able to hold his own on both sides of the ball. He's got a lot to learn defensively, but he looks like a menace down there and looks like he can be a monster center.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't underestimate the impact that losing Cade had. Like, I was just watching some Cade highlights yesterday, and just watching videos of him just collapsing the defense, and just like 2 to 3 guys open on the perimeter, like so many times, and kicking it out.
About
like
a guy who was one of the most double team players in the league last year.
Yeah,
that impact alone is massive.
And you have nobody on this team right now that's collapsing in defense. Your biggest threat to score is just doing it from the outside.
Yep.
So,
could you imagine Bojan Bogdanovic and Isaiah Stewart with the 3-point presences, with the 3-point presence that they have, and that have developed in Stewart's case? If Cade was drawing a double team off of one of those two guys all season long, we'd have it would look totally different. We were expecting Cade to be like a 26-4 guy this year.
Yep. But for me to buy into your sudden optimism,
there's not a lot of it, but there is something.
That would mean we would have to be in agreement here that next season we're going to need to see a pretty big jump.
Oh, I've said it all season long.
Yeah.
I'm done with losing. Next year, you're making the playoffs, or I'm done. Or I think Troy Weaver needs to be let go. My line is drawn in the sand. That is a hard line for me.
Yeah.
You need to be playing meaningful basketball, and by that I mean playoff basketball.
Yeah. No, like because I'd said before, like I am not willing to set the timeline back a year because K got hurt.
Nope.
We were talking mid-30s this year. I'm talking with flirting, and then we were talking about flirting with 500 ball the year following. I'm still anticipating 500 ball this following year.
Yes, absolutely. Which in the East, I mean, you're probably not looking at. Well, you are looking at playoff basketball. You'd be the 8th seed right now if you were 500.
Yeah, hosting a playing game.
Hosting a playing game. Yeah. That is, in my opinion, bare minimum what the Pistons should be doing next year is hosting a playing game. I would like them to be the 6th seed in all reality, but the East is extremely competitive right now. Is what's safe to say.
Because our anticipation this year was like you'd be good enough to be a play-in team, but because of how stacked the East is, you might just miss a play-in, and that's okay as long as we see a good product on the floor that looks like a play-in basketball team.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you're not at least a 10 seed next year, I want Troy Weaver gone.
Oh no, I'm saying that was our expectation for this year.
This year, so yes, This year was 30s.
So for us to say
wins.
For us to say the same thing going into next year, that's us pushing the timeline back a year, and we're both in agreement we're not wanting to do that.
I'm not doing that.
But I think hosting a play-in game is logical. Assuming the Nets are dead.
The Nets are dead. Granted, that team doesn't look that bad.
Yeah.
Like, it really doesn't. I kind of like their roster a little bit. But the Hawks just fired their coach. Who knows what they're going to be like? The Wizards.
Hawks might be dead soon.
Like. The Raptors are starting to draw dead because of they're looking at possibly losing OG Anunoby in the offseason.
Scotty Barnes took a step back.
A step back this year. I'm
not going to sit here and say like Scotty Barnes sucks all of a sudden. Like the sophomore slump is a real thing.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, just ask Sadiq Bey. Granted, he actually played a decent sophomore year. But
once he put the headband on, weird. It was.
But I mean,
it was a different Sadiq.
You look at the Heat. He's a free agent after this year.
Who?
Jimmy Butler's a free agent after this year. The Heat could be going on the downslope. Like there's a lot of things a lot of these teams in that play-in scenario.
I just think the Heat are a big enough market where they can.
They probably can. Yeah, I would imagine so. But who knows? You never really know. The Heat were utterly irrelevant until. Like Dwayne Wade got down. Yeah.
And it wasn't even that long they were relevant for, though, too.
Right. Yeah. But next year, in my mind, this team should be hosting a playing game. You mentioned...
I guess...
take what
this is why I didn't want to finish out the year with Dwayne Casey, because I'm like, I think Jaden Ivey's development going into next season is going to be crucial.
I do too.
You got Cade coming back. Hopefully, some good development out of Jaden Ivey. Some good development out of Duren. I want Isaiah Stewart to just keep on the track he's on. He's the one guy I'm happy with right now from that draft. And then hopefully we get a wing in this draft. Might not be Brandon Miller anymore, but
Probably
maybe
not.
Jarris Walker if you don't land one of the top 2 picks. I really like him. So at least that's someone who brings some defensive intensity to this damn team.
Right. Well, going forward, and to your point of not wanting to have Dwayne Casey finish out the year, you can make the argument that the rest of the season begins the push for next year. Like it begins the push for development. It begins getting guys like Duren and Wiseman playing together, or figuring out how they work together, and figuring out how Jaden Ivey can work with these guys, and Bojan. And sure, you don't get Cade, but you get everybody else. And, you look at the pieces that we're going to be going into next year with Jalen Duren, James Wiseman, likely, Jaden Ivey, Bojan Bogdanovic, likely. You add Cade to that, you add another top 5 pick, most likely, and you have, $50 million in cap space that you've got to do something with. This is the year. Yeah, you should at the very least be hosting a play-in game next year. Very least. And if you're not, then as a GM, you have drastically underperformed. Where you've been given how many top 5 picks?
What team do you think is most likely to have a something resembling a fire sale this offseason? Could the Suns implode? They just sold off Michael
Bridges.
Bridges.
That was bringing Kevin Durant.
I know, but like Durant's disloyal. Come on.
I don't think so. I don't think the Suns are the team. I think that team is going to stick around for a bit. They just signed Ayton. They are like Booker. I don't think is going anywhere. He's under contract still.
Did you see a team offered? I think it was like 3 or 4 first-round picks for Michael Bridges, and that said no.
Yes. Devin Booker's got another year on his con. I think they'll run it back next year. I really do.
Michael Bridges is like the one guy I would really want on this team, but
I do too. I love Michael Bridges on this team.
I mean, Jesus Christ, if that was not enough, I don't know how you're gonna get him.
Kevin Durant's under contract for 3 more seasons, so he ain't going anywhere.
I think he's a wild card.
How? Like, he's under contract for 3 more years.
He can demand a trade again. Wouldn't it be the first time or the second time?
He demands
or the third time?
I highly doubt he demands a trade out of Phoenix. You're talking he's alongside DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker. He's not going to, and Chris Paul. He's not unhappy. Like, I don't think there's going to be an issue. I think at the very least, the earliest I think that team will totally implode is after next season. And it has to do with Devin Booker's contract. Just because I think that contract is what hinges this team, because could the
Raptors somewhat implode?
The Raptors
could the Pistons
could implode.
Somehow grab OG?
I think it's entirely possible. I do. Their asking price was stupid.
Yep.
But if he starts,
they're gonna have to come down from that a little bit.
Yes, if he starts to ask out, though, that price is going to start to come down. If he doesn't want to play there, I mean,
hasn't he already technically asked out? Or
I don't think so. He's only got 1 and 1 left, so he's got a year, and then he's got a player option for 24-25. Yeah. So if you're gonna move him, you probably should move him if you're Toronto, because I don't think if he stays in Toronto, I don't think he opts into that contract, and considering it's only for $17.5 million, I don't think he opts into it anyways.
Yeah.
So he's in all likelihood an expiring deal for Toronto.
Do you pay him for the Pistons?
I probably do. I think he's exactly what the Pistons need.
Yeah, he is.
I would give him probably a sizable deal, honestly. Like
you bring in OG. And let's say you don't get top 2 pick and you draft Jarris Walker, you suddenly have a defensive identity overnight.
Yeah, because then you can start to look at some of your guys as being able to mask the liabilities that guys like Bojan and Ivy have on the defensive side of the ball. And it helps guys like Cade Cunningham play defense, and it helps
exactly once they don't have to take the top guys, like
right,
they'll look like better defenders. But Yeah, in terms of your optimistic outlook, though, like it's not wrong. It doesn't make this season any easier to watch.
No, I absolutely not. There is no good reason for the Pistons to keep Dwayne Casey any further than 2 weeks ago, let alone tomorrow or the end of the season. There's no good reason for Troy Weaver to say he's done a nice job thus far, because he hasn't. This team has regressed, not progressed.
Yeah.
So in all reality,
it's just all contingent on that step forward that the Pistons make next year if it happens.
Out of curiosity,
how
many teams required 3 top 5 picks, including a number 1, in 3 years to build their roster? I'd honestly be curious about that, because that tells me that your team is not developing and you're not drafting the right talent, especially considering you also have to add in the fact that he has 4 more first-round picks on top of that.
Yeah.
Like
only one guy from the 2020 draft has developed, and that's Isaiah Stewart, and like Killian's like the Y in the vowels. Sometimes Killian.
Okay, that was probably one of the better ways to put that.
And
that was
Cade
awesome.
looked like he was developing mid-season. Like he looked miles better in March than he looked in December, for example. But like, it's just that one again.
I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Troy Weaver has mastered the draft, because he hasn't. Clearly, you've already traded away one of your draft picks, and the other one is probably not going to be brought back. Your other one was a first-round pick, and then you've got one guy who looks like he'll be a contributor off the bench.
But like, if Jaden Ivey actually like develops to what we expect of Jaden Ivey,
what is that? What do we expect of Jaden Ivey next year? And like, that is kind of I have such a big question mark over Jaden Ivey right now, because what is the fit with him in this team?
I want Jaden Ivey to be an explosive scorer. That's my expectation for him, and to be able to handle
being number 2, being number 3 potentially.
Yeah, but I'm saying like being able to handle some actual lead guard duties when asked of him. But obviously he's number 2 to Cade in the normal sense. But
in the right here now, yes.
Like just a guy that I can lean on for if Cade is in those games where Cade's doubled, doesn't really have a good avenue to put a lot of shots up. He's a guy that we can lean on to score in bunches at a high rate.
Yeah, I can see that. The problem is like
let's just put it this way: the not superstar version of Dwayne Wade. So like the poor man's D Wade is what I would expect.
But in the games where Cade is able to, where Cade's playing his normal game, he's putting up 20 points, 20, 25 points. Where does Jaden Ivey fit in that picture? Because that's where I start to worry about Jaden Ivey's fit, is how does Jaden Ivey get involved when Cade is that effective in a game? And he has to be for the team to win these games. That's the problem. And that's where
you'll have to have the same worry about Scoot.
You would, absolutely. You would. But thing is Jaden Ivey doesn't have the year of experience to playing alongside Cade to learn. Versus he would essentially be like, he would essentially be on the same playing field. Could have been knocked out in the rookie year.
Yeah.
So like that's my big question mark on Jaden Ivey going into next season, is on the nights where, yes, it's very obvious what his role is going to be on the nights where Cade just doesn't have it, or they're playing really effective defense against him. But on the nights where Cade is able to be effective with the ball in his hands and score the ball, putting up 20, 25 points a game, what is Jaden Ivey's role? And that's what I don't know.
Be effective moving off ball.
But does he do that?
Impact.
Because we haven't really seen that from him this year.
We have not. Impact the game defensively and just get your buckets when the time is right.
Impact the game defensively. Have you watched this man play defense, sir?
No, I'm not saying this is what he's doing now. I'm saying this is what his role should be. This is what I want him to develop into.
He has shown me nothing to tell me that he even has a lick of defensive ability in his game.
I mean, I'm throwing out the entire defense this year at this point.
Sure, but I have watched this man get driven by.
I've
watched plumbers drive by this man.
I've never seen a team so collectively bad on the defensive end of the ball. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Like Jaden Ivey looks like the worst defensive player on this basketball team.
Oh, bogey.
They're both in the bottom. They are both in the bottom 5 in defensive in DVOA.
Yeah. So was Sadiq, but we got rid of him.
Yeah. So it ain't pretty.
Yeah.
My optimism going into next season hinges entirely on Duren continuing to progress, Stewart continuing to progress, Ivy being able to find that role, using the free agent or the cap space effectively, Cade coming back healthy, and this team meshing. This team must be a play-in team next year. Like, if you tell me that if they end up being a 9 seed and they are a game out of an 8 seed of hosting a play-in game, I'm not going to say fire Troy Weaver. Yeah. Like, it is what it is at that point. But if this team is like,
it's just if we don't see significant tangible improvement.
If this team is fighting for a 10 seed and goes down to the final game and miss it or get it, I'm not going to be happy with that. Yeah. Because you're likely 4 or 5 games out of the 8 seed at that point.
Because it would feel like a minor step to me.
Right.
Because that's what they should have been doing this year.
Right.
So
at that point, obviously if you're not competing for a 7 or 8 seed minimum, I'd like Troy Weaver to have the door. Like I'd like him to go. Yeah. But you've had enough time, and you've had enough damn draft picks.
Final question before we quickly hit on the Lions here. Now that nothing else can really happen in terms of roster stuff the rest of the year, except for maybe like signings.
What do you mean? We just signed RJ Hampton.
You know what I'm saying? Except for like maybe like signings. What if anything are you looking for from this team in the last like 25 games this season?
Hopefully Jalen Duren gets healthy and rather quickly, and it's to see the fit of Wiseman and Duren together. I'd like to see those two playing alongside, if that is the future plan. And if it is, I'd like Weaver to get in the ear of Dwayne Casey and say, you're gone at the end of the season regardless. You're playing these two together as much as you possibly can.
Yep. I agree. I agree with that. I want to see, definitely want to get a little idea of what Wiseman's role is supposed to be on this team in the future. And can he play along with our current supposed probable likely I want him to be big man in the future in Jalen Duren.
Jalen Duren better be your big man of the future. Yeah. Because frankly, I'm going to sit here and say that I think Jalen Duren is your star big man of the future. Yeah. Call me crazy.
For me, I'm looking to see the resolve of some of these young guys. We saw this last year where the team was not in the playoff picture, but they played some of their best ball down the stretch in the last 25 games. I'm not asking them to do what this team did last year, and we also saw it in the year before that as well.
Is it weird? I almost don't want them to.
Well, yeah,
because that would all but knock them out of the bottom 3.
This is why you do what the 2020 team did, and you play your best ball down the stretch, but you don't actually win those games.
That's fine with me.
Get really close.
That is fine with me.
But
just
in general,
miss that last free throw.
Okay, let's use the 2020 team as an example. Again, it was all young guys. They'd gotten rid of it was post getting rid of Blake Griffin and all that, and although they weren't winning games, they played their asses off night in, night out. And, we're still bad enough to get number 1 pick because they weren't winning games. They were completely out of the playoff question. And that's kind of all I'm expecting is just, can this team for once play their asses off again? Like, they're clearly out of the playoff picture, but can I turn on a game and watch it and actually at least be somewhat impressed by the character of the players on the floor?
Yeah.
I know we're not going to win anything, but
right. No, I want to see this team mesh a little bit. At least the guys that, because that's really been something that they haven't had all year. They've looked very disjointed. Yeah. Like we even said at times,
it's like whatever culture we felt like we were building.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see this team mesh a little bit. You've had 60 games to play together, so let's figure this thing out. One other thing that I kind of want to see, and it's a little bit more under the radar because it involves guys that you don't really know much about, but there's a lot of opportunity for guys like Isaiah Livers to really cement.
I thought you were about to say you want to see him bring in Gabriel Posita from the EuroLeague.
Well, no, guys like Isaiah Livers to really cement their role on this basketball team for the future. And I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, Isaiah Livers, your wing of the future," but he at least can give himself or make an argument for himself to garner 20-ish minutes a game next season.
Yeah, like can he at least match what Sadiq Bey's production was on a halfway decent night?
with more efficiency.
With
more efficiency.
Yeah. He's already better defensively than Sadiq.
Right. And that's really what I'm asking of him is play effective defense in your minutes and be efficient when the ball is in your hands and when you're asked to score. Hit your threes, especially if they're wide open, which I've seen him miss a lot of open threes. Like, hit your shots when they're there and play effective defense. And if you can do that, I see no reason not to play him 20-ish minutes a game next year.
Yeah.
Guys like that can still be important to a basketball team, and that's what I think he's somebody who's got to step up towards the end of the season. Like you said, we want him to play good basketball the rest of the way. He's one of the guys that can provide that.
Yep, 100%. You're spot on with that.
And that goes for not just Livers. It goes for Livers, Diallo, who I think Diallo's probably gone after this year anyways. Those names.
It's the ironic thing, too, is like Diallo's like one of those guys that does give full effort when he comes in off the bench.
He just sucks.
He just
I remember we were so excited when they brought him in, too. Like, yes, this is the guy
Well, yeah, because we traded, it was Fee Mikhailuk for him. Like,
yeah.
I was like, sure, take him. Nothing. That's the point. This is like, wow, Weaver's a magician. How
it was Fee Mikhailuk in a second-round pick, wasn't it? Something
it's like Weaver's a magician. How's he getting teams to take these trades?
Right. Well, then you've got the trade where we brought in, who was it? Where we traded Trey Lyles and Josh Jackson. Was that Marvin Bagley?
Yep.
That was a Marvin Bagley trade. Two guys that didn't even want to be here.
Yeah.
And were expiring deals. We didn't care. We don't even like them anyways.
And then the Bogey trade, too.
Yeah. Troy Weaver seems to trade well.
Yeah.
I just wish he would do other things well also.
I'm trying to remember, who did we trade? Saban Lee, Kelly Olynyk. That's who we traded.
For who?
Bogey. That was Saban
Bogey,
Lee and Kelly Olynyk.
Yeah,
what a beautiful trade. What a beautiful trade.
Whatever happened to Olynyk? Because he was actually like a productive player in the NBA.
When he played. Oh, no, not for the Pistons. But yeah, like with Houston, he was pretty good.
I mean, Olynyk had a couple productive nights for the Pistons.
That's what I said, when he played.
Yeah. But let's go ahead and kind of quick switch over to the Lions here before we run out of time. Lions lost another coach in their staff this week. Todd Wash, the defensive line coach, has decided to go with Deuce Staley and take the same position down in Carolina. What's your thoughts on losing Todd Wash?
I mean, I'm not too bent out of shape about it, to be honest. Like, I did like the production we got out of the players along the D-line this year, but
they set a Lions rookie record for sacks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I did.
Like, they got a hell of a lot more production than anybody expected.
At the same time, Todd Wash was not a name I was hearing thrown around like in the locker room or just among reporters as a like.
I actually heard his name a lot last year.
I didn't, as someone who did really credit with that success. But
I mean,
like if he is the main driving force behind our D-line seemingly overperforming last year, then yeah, that sucks that he left and for a lateral move at that. But it's just, at least from where I was sitting, I didn't see his name come up that often. So.
I did see his name come up a decent amount. Probably if I had to figure out if I had to list the coaches on defense that I heard the most, it was Aaron Glenn, Aubrey Pleasant for bad reasons.
For bad reasons.
And the third most name I heard was Todd Wash. In the beginning of the season for bad reasons, in the end of the season for good reasons.
Yeah.
The Lions, the players seem to be receptive of what he had to say. He obviously gets a lot out of young guys and gets them to overperform. Even Aiden Hutchinson, you can make an argument, outperformed his expectation a little bit with 9.5 sacks, 2 picks. And James Houston came out of nowhere and just had an incredible second half to the year after being injured for the first half as a 6th round pick. You got a lot out of guys you really didn't expect to. And usually that equates to really good coaching. That's why I'm a little bit concerned about this one because, one of the things we talked about in the offseason was I just want to keep as much of the band together as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we kept the main 3, which is great, but you lost a lot of the key pieces beyond that. You lost your running backs coach and Deuce Staley, who was a big voice in the locker room.
Yep.
You lost your defensive line coach, who was a big voice for those D linemen.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, when you have your DC as a cornerbacks guy, you need somebody like Todd Wash to come in and be the guy for the big, to be the voice for the big guys. So losing somebody like that, I wanted to keep the cohesiveness and the continuity of the same voice there for the next year to continue to grow with these guys, because that D-line is still very young.
It is.
And Todd Wash being there as a consistent voice would have really helped those young guys take the next step forward. So now you're having to plug somebody else in who may have a different philosophy. The biggest concern I have for bringing in a new voice at D-line now is sophomore slumps. Because when you go from hearing one philosophy, one voice for an entire year, and then things change entirely to somebody else, it can cause you to take a step back.
Yeah.
It can force you to play a way you may not be comfortable with.
Isn't that something we're going to have to trust Dan Campbell with, though, in terms of like getting a guy in here that's going to be at least somewhat consistent with how they want to approach the D-line play?
I mean, absolutely. Like, you got to trust Dan Campbell to make the right decision on who he's bringing in. And I do. I'm not saying I don't. I do. I just think that any voice change is a negative one for a team that is that young in that position group. And
I do wonder why he left, though, honestly.
He's attached to Deuce Staley. Like, from all I can see is Deuce Staley had a lot of influence on him. And anytime you see a coach go like that, where they just go with a guy that they were already in a coaching staff with, that meant that guy really meant a lot. And that was one of the things I was concerned with, is what is the fallout from Deuce Staley leaving. I was more so concerned with player personnel wise and player wise, but also coaching. You could start to see, you've heard of coaches getting hired elsewhere, as an OC getting hired elsewhere as a head coach, and then he ends up stealing the quarterback's coach and the wide receivers coach from his old team as well. You've heard of that happening a lot. Deuce Staley just seems to have that personality and that impact where even though he wasn't a coordinator becoming a head coach, he was taking a lateral job, but he's also able to get other guys too to come with him.
Which that part is surprising to me.
No, I just seeing what
you could tell from Hard Knocks that
seeing what I've seen about Deuce Staley, that dude may be the most respected coach in the league.
Yeah.
People love that man, and for good reason. It's going to be interesting to see who they bring in to replace Todd Wash. I think it is really important, though. We don't talk a lot about position coaches.
Is Aaron Donald retiring, or is he coming back for one more year?
Aaron Donald is coming back, as far as I know.
Can you imagine?
The thing is with Aaron Donald is I feel like he's just one of those guys that's pure brute and talent, and there's just nothing you can do to stop that.
Lions signed Aaron Donald as defensive line coach.
Now, they do have, I'm not going to sit here and talk about a ton of candidates because most of the names we're not going to know who the hell we're talking about.
Yeah. I don't know
they had an assistant D-line coach who's probably one of your lead candidates.
Okay.
There's former players. I mean, there's a lot of guys that the Lions could look at. So who they end up going with, I don't know. We'll find out, though.
Just got to cross your fingers. There's no slump.
The one thing I'll say about promoting the assistant defensive line coach is it will help keep that consistent voice in the locker room there. And I think that is going to be important going into next year with how young the defense is. It's only going to get younger with what they bring in the draft. And it allows there to be some cohesiveness between the other coaches, the other position group coaches, and the linebackers coach, the defensive secondary coach. That's going to be important.
In other interesting news, though, Amon-Ra St. Brown is trying to be the Lions' top scout.
He's recruiter. Recruiter St. Brown.
Recruiter St. Brown. It's not the first time we've heard Jalen Ramsey's name thrown around.
No.
And I've been pretty dismissive of it in the past, and I still don't really see it now.
I disagree. I think the Lions should be looked at as one of the lead candidates to get him.
Oh, I'm talking about, like, I don't know if I want
I do.
Jalen Ramsey.
I do.
Like,
he's under contract for 3 or 4 years. He's on the right side of 30, and he's one of the top 5 corners in the NFL in a position that you desperately need. What the hell is the problem?
He's on the right side of 30.
He's
Isn't Jalen Ramsey like 32?
No, he's like 28 or 29.
Jesus, did I miscalculate how old Jalen Ramsey was?
Yeah.
Wait, he's 28. Okay,
He's
never
28,
mind.
yeah. He's got 4 years left on his deal. He'll be 32 when it's over. You're still effective at corner at least CB2 at 32.
Jesus, we're talking about a guy that's younger than me, and I'm talking about him being too old.
Yeah. You might be too old to play cornerback one in the NFL, but he's not.
Okay, never mind. I take that back then. So, how expensive do you think it's going to be?
The Rams are in a position where they're going to look to cut salary. I don't think it's going to be as expensive as you might think. I think you're talking
Third and the fifth?
no. It's going to take you a first round pick. It's going to take probably 18, maybe a third or fourth also. And I'll be honest with you, I'd do it. What are you going after? What are you going after at 18 if you're the Lions? You're CB1? Guess what? I got him for you. And he's already a star. Now, the one issue with Jalen Ramsey is if he's unhappy, he's a problem.
Yeah, that is too. That's
but
true.
Caveat is if you're winning, he's quiet, and he's probably a big reason why you're winning. I have a firm belief, like I have a sneaky belief. I guess firm and sneaky belief really aren't the same thing, but I have a feeling the Lions believe that they are not just division contenders next year. I think the Lions think they're like contender next year.
Well, yeah, if you're top 10 in odds, you're a slight improvement away from actual Super Bowl contender.
And could you make the argument that bringing in Jalen Ramsey and then adding one of the premier defensive linemen at the top of the draft is your slight improvement that you need?
You can definitely make that argument.
Yeah, you definitely could.
Considering the general improvement you need is on the defensive end of the ball anyways.
And guess what? You just filled two needs on the defensive side of the ball. And then you've still got some cap space to go and get Levante David. Boom, you filled your third. Guess what? You're a Super Bowl contender.
I don't like saying that and the Lions in the same ilk.
Neither do I. But you know what?
It feels like a trap.
But you know what? It isn't that crazy.
Feels like going back to an X. Like
I legitimately think the Lions could be contenders to go get Jalen Ramsey this offseason because they want to go for it. They're hungry. They want it, and they know what their window is now.
Yeah.
Their window is just beginning to open. And the quicker you can jump on the chance to open that window wide open, more opportunity, and the longer you're able to get this thing to make this thing happen.
Can you believe that, like, in the offseason that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell took this over, I had told you that in the offseason after their second year, we're talking Lions Super Bowl contenders. And they still haven't even made the playoffs yet.
I'd have laughed at you. And it does sound ridiculous to even consider that. Let's be real. They haven't made the playoffs yet. You're not wrong. But
they're a playoff two in my heart, all right?
They should have been in the playoffs one. They got screwed by officiating in a game they weren't even playing in. And two, I firmly believe their division runs through them. Yeah. And anytime you can host playoff games, you're dangerous. Especially when you are returning your entire offensive line,
a large we know how loud
defensive
Ford Field
line
can get.
You're returning, you're returning a majority of the most important positions on your roster. And you got some cap space as well, because as long as you cut Michael Brockers, which is to be expected, a couple other names out there, you're going to have about $50 million cap space. You're going to be able to make some noise. And frankly, Amon-Ra St. Brown going on Twitter saying, hey, Jalen Ramsey, let's make it happen. Come on to Detroit. I love it. I know it's the way that guys just interact with each other now. I don't really think there's anything to make out of it. But you know what I do make out of it? That Micah Parsons is a piece of shit. Him coming out saying, ain't nobody want to go from LA to Detroit. I know a lot of people that want to leave LA first off. That's a shithole city. I'm sure the way that Jalen Ramsey lives in that city, it isn't that bad. But
so if you're a betting man, are you betting Lions and Pistons to make playoffs next year?
What's my odds?
As a parlay.
I'm gonna need a line.
I mean, Lions odds are gonna be pretty low. Pistons odds might be pretty high.
Pistons will probably be plus 500 if I'll give
you plus 850.
Throw in the Red Wings, get it up over 1,200, and I'm in. I think there's a legitimate chance we're talking all three Detroit. We're talking 3 of 4 Detroit teams in the playoffs next year. A legitimate chance.
And one of them is a very faithful leap, but
yeah, obviously.
Yeah,
I think the Pistons could be themselves could be like a plus 500, plus 700 chance to make the playoffs next year.
Yeah.
I think plus 500 is like being nice. I think you're probably looking at about plus 700, plus 800 for the Pistons to make the playoffs next year.
Yeah. There's
but I think
there's a very wide range of outcome for the Pistons next year.
I'm actually curious.
And let's just say that a significant area of that range is going to start getting into Fire Weaver territory.
Yes. I'm very curious about futures. Do they have these posted? Probably not, because they probably wait for the draft, if I had to guess.
Yeah. Or at least for the season end.
Yeah, the furthest out I can go is the NBA, is 2023 NBA draft. I do think that there is a realistic possibility that the Wings, Pistons, and Lions are all playoff teams next season.
So what that tells me, it's just going to be a really fun
back,
summer.
Baby.
Oh, I was going to say it's going to be a really fun summer.
It's going to be a really long summer because we have to watch Tiger baseball, which may be the worst Tiger team we've seen. I know,
but I'm talking about off seasons for the other three teams. You're talking about the Lions gunning for contender status, so making some moves. Hopefully. We're talking Troy Weaver making moves for basically his job at this point.
It could also be a very disappointing offseason. You got to be careful.
Yeah, because at least on the Lions and Pistons. Well, the Red Wings made their moves last year, right?
They're not done. They're not done. The fact that they are competing for a playoff spot this year, I think they're a little bit ahead of the curve. They're not done. They still have a lot of holes in that team, including lefty, and they desperately need another center, like a top 6 center, to be honest.
But yeah, so it'll give us some entertainment outside of Tigers baseball. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, it would. We'd have an entertaining 8 months, 9 months, 9 months.
Well, I can honestly say this is the most positive we've been on this podcast
in a long time.
I don't know why.
In a long time.
It took us getting a week break from having watched Pistons basketball to actually be positive about it.
It was a nice refresher.
They haven't lost in a week. Would you look at that?
The Wings are in the midst of probably their most important game of the year against the Washington Capitals. Started a little while ago, and currently they are up. So this is their most important game of the year because Caps are right neck and neck with them, and they're just ahead in the standings by 2 points, I believe. So big one. So, but anyways. That is going to call for this week, guys. You don't have anything else to add? We will catch you guys next week. Follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast, as always, at Detroit Podcast, where you can find them. This has been the Fan Reporters by fans.
For fans.
We will catch you guys next week. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Isn't that YouTube? Or can you do that on Apple Podcasts as well?
I don't think you can like.
Put 5-star reviews down. That's what you can
review and you can review and subscribe.
5-star reviews. There we go. Have a good one, guys. We will catch you guys next week. Peace out.
Peace.